Hello everyone, welcome back to Rushmere 3D. I'm James. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a project called Spoolman. Now, what this is it's a self-hosted web service that allows you to store information about your filament inventory. So, the type of filament, the color, how much weight is remaining on the spool, etc. Now, I'm quite late to taking up Spoolman, but I found it really useful for keeping track of the filament that I've got, because honestly I found some filament when I was filling my database in that I forgot I had. And what we can also do with this is connect it to our Klipper based printers and automatically track and update how much filament is left on the spool. So this is my database, and as you can see, I've got 58 spools of filament from 24 different manufacturers. So if we go over to the spools tab, when that loads up, we can see that I've got some DAS filament, Prusament, G-Tech, Everyone, etc. And you can see here that what it's telling you about the filament is its type, filament weight we've used from the spool, and how much was remaining, and the last time we used it. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you how to install that onto a Raspberry Pi, which is what I use for mine, and then also how to add manufacturers, filaments and spools to your database. So the first thing we need to do is prepare our Raspberry Pi. Okay, so let's have a look at how we actually install Spoolman onto a Raspberry Pi. Well, the first thing we're going to need is a base operating system. So to do that, I will just use the Raspberry Pi Imager, and that will just put a version of the operating system onto the SD card. So the first thing we need to do is choose the device that we're going to use. So I'm going to use a Raspberry Pi 3. And then what we want to do is we actually want to choose other. And the reason we're doing this is because these ones include a desktop environment, which we're not going to need. So there's no point using those images. We just click on that. And then we can use this Raspberry Pi OS Lite 64-bit. We'll then choose our storage device and click next. Now it's going to ask us if we want to use customized settings, which we do. So if we click on this, we can see that we are going to set a host name of Spoolman, and I'll show you how we use that later. We're going to use SSH, which is what this option is, and then it's going to automatically configure my Wi-Fi details. And then we've also, just for completeness, set the local settings. We click save, we click yes, and then we're also going to want to erase this card, so we click yes again. And that's now going to do that. So I will bring you back when that's done. So as you can see, that's now written the Raspberry Pi OS Lite 64-bit to the SD card. Now what we want to do is safely remove that SD card from our laptop or PC, and we'll insert that into our Raspberry Pi and let it boot up. Okay, so now that we've taken the SD card and put it in our Raspberry Pi and powered on, after a couple of minutes that would have expanded into the file system and be up and running, ready for us to use. So the first thing we need to do now is log into the Pi via SSH. So what I use to do that is a piece of software called Putty. Now, we need either the host name or the IP address of that Raspberry Pi. And luckily, we give the Raspberry Pi a host name when we were setting it up. So we can just enter Spoolman here, .local. And what this will do is it will look on our network for that device and prompt us to log in. So we click open. And now we can use the username and password that we set up. So it was Pi and then your password. And that will now log us into that Raspberry Pi, ready for us to install Spoolman. But before we do that, it's best to update the Raspberry Pi OS with the latest information. So if we head back to our browser and then head over to this page, these are the two commands we want. So we want sudo apt update. So we'll copy that over and just paste it into the terminal window and click enter. And then that will run that command. Now this will take a couple of seconds, so we'll just let that do. We next want to run this command, sudo apt full upgrade, and again paste it into there. Now this will take again a couple of seconds, so we'll just let that carry on, and it's going to ask us if we want to continue because it's going to use some of our storage space. So we'll just click enter to do the default yes. Okay, so now we have a fully up-to-date base OS for our Spoolman install. So if we head back to the Spoolman GitHub, and if we scroll down, then we can see we've got a link to the installation page. Now this is incredibly simple to do. We go past this Docker install, and we have a standalone install. And then this is, if you're doing a first install, you would just run this first part. So that's what we're going to do. We click this button and we'll copy the entire set of commands here. Head back to our terminal, and again copy that command in and click enter. And again, this is going to take a couple of minutes, so I'll bring you back when it's done. So as you can see, we're now being asked if we want to set up Spoolman as a systemd service. What this basically means is that it will automatically start Spoolman when we start our Raspberry Pi. So again, we click Y and then enter. So as you can see, we've now installed Spoolman onto our Raspberry Pi, and that's given us our IP address of the device, plus we need this port number. Now let's open up a web browser and take a look at our fresh install. So here we are in our fresh install of Spoolman. Now to get here, all I did was put into the address bar our host name followed by the port that it gave us in the terminal. Then what we need to do is start adding our filament to the database. The way I do this is start from the right hand side and set up a manufacturer first. So if we just click on the plus sign here, we can then simply enter our manufacturer's name. So for this video, I'm going to use LDO. Now you can also put some comments here if you want to. And although it asks for an empty spool weight, this doesn't seem to carry across to later fields. So for the time being, we'll leave that empty. So you just click save. And if we go back to the home page, you can see that we've now got one manufacturer. So we'll next move on to filaments. Again, clicking the plus sign. So here we need to give the filament a name that is also descriptive. So that can also include using the color. So I'm going to call this one LDO blue. And then from the manufacturer list, we can actually select LDO. We can select whether this is a multi-color filament or a single color filament. So we'll click single, click the color wheel, and then we'll just click a blue that might represent the color that we've actually got. So we'll go for that. Now the material, we obviously need to tell it what we're using. So this will be PLA. We can enter a price here if we want to, and we can actually change the currency units in the settings. We also need to set up the density of the filament. So this is used when we actually calculate how much is used via Klipper. So PLA is 1.24, and then obviously the diameter is 1.75. Now here we can enter the weight of the spool and the filament. So the filament weight of a full spool, the net weight. Now this is mostly included on the labeling, on the packaging. So I know that that is 1000 grams. Now the spool weight, this is useful for if we want to measure the spool that we have remaining. We can say, okay, I can deduct the spool weight and know what I've got. So, but obviously to get this, you're either going to need to have that from the manufacturer or an empty spool to actually measure. Just for this video, I'm just going to enter 135 grams. Now we can also enter extruder temp and bed temp if we want to, or we can just move on. So we click the save button. That is now created our filament. It's called PLA and it's got a weight of 1,000 grams. So if we go back to the home page, now this is where we create our spools, and the spools are what we use in Klipper. So we click the plus sign again, and then when we click in the filament field, we can see that our filament that we just created is there. But you also have a database of other filaments that have been set up. So you might choose to use this method instead of creating a manufacturer and a filament and a spool, but this is the way I do it. So we'll click the one we've just created, and you can see that this is fed over some information. So we've got the weight and our empty weight, and then this gives us a measured weight. So this is basically those two combined. So if we then click save, we now have our first spool set up. It's ID number 1. It tells us the manufacturer and the color, the type, how much filament is weight has been used, and how much is remaining. So as this is a new one, it obviously hasn't been used. So we go back to the home page, and that is it basically. And then you would do that for all of your filament that you own, and that is a great way of just even getting an inventory of what filament you have. So I'll now briefly show you how you would add the Spoolman service to Klipper so that we can actually track the filament in real time. So now we've set up our Spoolman database and started filling in our filament, how do we actually use this with our Klipper / Moonraker printer? Well, if we head back to the Spoolman GitHub and scroll down to where it talks about the Spoolman integration and click on Moonraker, this will open up a separate website that gives us the code that we need to input into our printer. So if we copy this information here and head over to your printer, so in my case this is my Voron trident, and I've actually already got it set up. So let me show you how we get that on here. So we head into the machine settings and then the Moonraker config file. You'll see that I've pasted that information at the bottom, and so all you need to do is replace the default IP address with yours, including the port number, and then you would save and restart. And when you come back to your dashboard, you'll have this extra little box here, and this is how you would actually select the spool to track it. So you would click the select spool button. Now obviously this video only shows one here, but in my database I would have the 58 odd spools. You'd simply click on that, and that is now set in the Spoolman window here, and when we start a print, this information will be fed back to our database, and it will update the remaining weight and the last used information periodically throughout the print. Now when we finish a print, we obviously need to deselect that spool. So you would actually just click on these 3 dots and click eject spool and then confirm it, and it's now untracked. I hope this video showing you how to set up your Spoolman database has been useful. Please consider subscribing and liking the video if you have enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you want to ask me any questions. And yeah, thank you for watching, and until next time, keep on printing.